So, you've probably seen this idea floating around, the 24-hour repair protocol for when your brain just feels, well, dead. And at the heart of it is a very simple and very, very cold idea.
And the big claim, the one that gets all the attention, is this. A jolt of cold water is the ultimate brain hack. That a quick, 60-second cold shower or a full-on ice bath can instantly supercharge your focus and wipe away brain fog.
So what's the deal? Is this really a magic reset button for your brain? Or is there a catch? Let's dive into the actual science behind it.
First things first, we've got to understand what's actually happening on a chemical level. Because, let's be real, the second that freezing water hits your skin, it's like a chemical bomb goes off in your brain. It is, quite literally, a shock to your entire system.
And the numbers here are pretty wild. Get this. Just dunking yourself in water that's about 14 degrees Celsius, so that's around 57 Fahrenheit, can crank up your metabolic rate by a staggering 350%. Your body kicks into overdrive, just torching energy to keep from freezing.
And that's not even the craziest part. That same study, it found a massive 530% spike in noradrenaline. Now, noradrenaline is a huge player in your brain's fight or flight response. It's what makes you feel super alert and focused. A 530% jump that's like flooring the gas pedal on your brain's attention system.
On top of that, you get a 250% increase in dopamine, you know, the motivation molecule. And the best part? It's not one of those quick hits that leaves you crashing a few minutes later. Nope. The science shows it's a slow, sustained release. We're talking hours of feeling more motivated and in a better mood. Okay, so why is all this happening? It all comes down to something called the cold shock response. Your brain basically thinks you're in serious danger, and it pulls out all the stops to survive. You start breathing fast, your heart pounds, your blood pressure goes through the roof. Your body's just doing everything it possibly can to keep you alive.
So, with your brain in full-on survival mode, firing off all these powerful chemicals, how does that actually feel? Well, this is where things get really interesting, and where the hype starts to line up with the actual data.
Researchers had people take a 5-minute cold bath, and afterwards, they didn't just feel a little better, they felt way more active, more alert, more attentive, even inspired and proud. And on the flip side, they felt a lot less distressed and less nervous. It's like it turns up the volume on the good feelings and turns down the volume on the bad ones.
And this wasn't just them saying, yeah, I feel good. Scientists actually put them into fMRI scanners to see what was physically happening in their brains to cause these feelings.
And what they found was absolutely fascinating. The scan showed that different parts of the brain were actually talking to each other more effectively. We're talking about the networks in charge of your attention, your emotions, and your self-control. So that feeling of being sharp and in a great mood, it's not just a feeling. It's backed up by real, measurable changes in your brain's wiring.
Okay, so you feel amazing. You're alert, motivated, and less stressed. Seems like a total win, right? Case closed. Well, not so fast. Here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Because it turns out that feeling sharp and actually thinking sharp are two very, very different things.
And this right here is the heart of the paradox. On one side, you've got how you feel, alert, inspired, less stressed, awesome. But then you look at how you actually perform on cognitive tests, and the data is pretty clear. People have slower reaction times, a worse working memory, and their executive function, that ability to plan and make smart decisions, takes a serious nosedive. I mean, this quote from one of the major studies says it all. This isn't just a tiny dip in performance. It can have real-world consequences. And get this, the brain fog can actually stick around even after you've warmed up. So you might feel like you're back to 100%, but your brain is still playing catch-up.
So what is going on here? How can one thing make you feel so good but think so poorly? We've got to dig into a couple of theories to figure this out and finally resolve the paradox.
For a while, people thought maybe a little bit of cold stress could actually be a good thing for performance. They called it the arousal hypothesis, and the idea was it would heighten your attention. But as we've just seen, most of the research says, nope, the opposite is true.
Which brings us to the theory that really holds water, the distraction hypothesis. Here's the best way to think about it. Your brain is like a computer with a limited amount of processing power. When you jump into freezing water, your body sends a massive, all-caps emergency signal. Your brain has to divert almost all of its resources to dealing with that threat, to running the Keep This Human Alive program. And that just doesn't leave much brain power for anything else.
So really the best way to look at this is to think of cold exposure as a eustress. That's just a fancy word for good stress. The chemical rush is legit. The mood boost is real, but it comes at a temporary price. You're basically taking out a short-term loan on your cognitive resources to pay for that survival response. You feel alert because your fight-or-flight system is screaming, not because your higher-level thinking is firing on all cylinders.
And that brings us to the real takeaway. The question we should be asking isn't, is cold exposure good or bad for my brain? It's not that simple. A cold plunge is an incredibly powerful tool, but whether it's the right tool depends entirely on what you're trying to do. If you need to break through feeling sluggish and just get moving, it's amazing. But if you need to sit down right after and do some deep, focused work, you might actually be shooting yourself in the foot. So the real question you have to ask yourself is, what do I need my brain to do right now?